What up, though? This is Matt Guy Steve. So here we're addressing measures of position, right? And so we talk about measures of central tendency and measures of dispersion or spread or variability, right? And so here we want to talk about the measures of position, all right? So the things we want to learn today is use percentile rank to compare values from different data sets, okay? Compare quartiles for an entire data set, and then draw a box plot and then find the range of that data set, right? So or percentile rank of a data value indicates the percents of data values in a set that are below that particular value. Okay, so like a test score that has a percentile rank of 60% means that 60% of all students who took the test scored lower than you did, right? Percentiles are also used very commonly in healthcare, especially pediatrics, right? To monitor a child's development. Doctors compare the child's height, weight, and head size at a certain age to measurements of other children at the same age. Okay, so if a child's percentiles suddenly change radically, then the doctor might suspect a problem in their development. Okay, so this is where percentiles come into play in real life or in the other. There's plenty of times that percentiles come into play, right? Even like your ACT score, right? So all those things come into play, the percentiles. So let's try an example. Here, example 1 says, okay. On exam, Angela scored in the 70th percentile. If there are 50 students in the class, how many students scored lower than Angela? So how do we find that? Well, we know there's 50 students, okay? And she scored in the 70th percentile. So oftentimes we can just multiply these numbers, right? So we say 70% or 0.70 of the 50, right? So times the 50. So 0.70 times 50 would give us 35, right? And so we know that 35 of the students scored below Angela's score. Okay, example 2 says, Tina's application for a nursing position is ranked at the 74th percentile out of the 112 applicants or applications. So if the top 15 applications will get job offers, then will Tina get a job offer? Well, how do we know how many scored below or above Tina? So we know 74th percentile just means, okay, take the 0.74 and multiply it by the 112, which gives us 82.88 or approximately 83 of the people scored below Tina's score. Now, that means 83 scored below. Hold on a second. We need the top 15, which means if 83 scored below, then, okay, 112 minus 83 will be 29 scored above Tina. In other words, if the top 15 applicants get the job offer, then no. We say no. Tina is not in the top 15 of those applicants. Let's try example 3. So, using percentiles to compare data. So, a national chain of department stores ranks its 1,100,000 salespersons by the monetary value of their sales. Okay, so Ravi's sales are at the 21st percentile. Heather's sales are at the 13th percentile. So let's answer some questions. Okay, which of the following must be true about Ravi's sales? Okay, so is the value of Ravi's sales were about 21% of the chain's total? Is this true? The value of Ravi's sales was in the top half of all the salespersons, okay? Ravi sold 2,100 in merchandise, or Ravi sold lower in value than about 79% of the salespeople. So the answer here has to be answer D, right? Okay, because if Ravi sold in the 21st percentile, right? That means 79% of the people sold lower than her, right? So the other 79% out of her 21st percentile, right? So this is the one that must be true. Okay, let's see about number 2. Which of the following must be true about Ravi's and Heather's sales combined, right? So the value of Ravi's sales were $800 more than Heather's, okay? The value of Heather's sales was $800 more than Ravi's, all right? Both Ravi and Heather had sales higher in value than the median, or both Ravi and Heather had sales lower in value than the median. All right, so answer D must be the case, right? That both Ravi and Heather had sales lower in value than the median. Remember, the median is the 50th percentile, right? And so because Ravi was in the 21st percentile, that's below 50, and Heather is in the 13th percentile, which is below 50, right? And so in that case, we know both of those are below the median, in other words, 50th percentile. So the next part says, okay, in section 4.3, one of our previous sections, we saw that the median of a data set divides the set into equal halves, okay? So the 50th percentile. Another statistical measure we will study is the quartile, which divides a data set into quarters. In other words, instead of 50th percentile, we have 25th, the 50th, and the 75th percentile, or into quarters, okay, into fourths. right? And so here's a visual of that. So we will use this Q1 to represent the first quartile, Q2 to represent the second quartile, in other words, the median, okay, and then Q3 to represent the third quartile. And so in order to do that, we'll say, okay, well, 25% of the data values are less than that Q1, and 75% are greater. In Q2, or the median, we know half of the percent of the data sets are below the Q2, and then half of them are above Q2, and then Q3, we know 75% of data values are less than that. In other words, 25% are greater than that Q3. Okay, so quartiles can be found using technology. It's essentially in that one var stats that we've been talking about, right? And so if we scroll down all the way in that one var stats, and we'll see we have the minimum, then the Q1, then the median, which is Q2, then Q3, and then the maximum, right? And so that would be where that one var stats helps us out there. So example 4 says find the quartiles of this data set. And if we type those numbers in, then we see that, okay, well, if we scroll down, then Q1 would be 1.2, okay. All right, Q2, which is the median, which is 9.75, and get Q3, which is 17.9. So those would be our quartiles for this data set. So then we talk about outliers, right? We mentioned these outliers before, and so outliers are data values that are extremely large or extremely small or extremely low compared to the rest of the data set. So we have formulas to help determine which values are outliers, right? But first, we'll need to define a new term, okay? So this is between the first and third quartiles. We call it the interquartile range, okay, or the IQR. That is, the IQR is just Q3 minus Q1. So, if data values are considered to be outliers, if they're outside the fences, essentially, if you think about the fences, think about your life, right? And so, if you have fences around your house, those are to keep things out. So, outliers. And so, anything outside the fences, we consider outliers. In other words, if it's above the, what we call upper fence, it's an outlier. Or it's below the lower fence, it's an outlier. Okay, so how do we find these fences? Well, the lower fence we find by Q1 minus 1.5 of those IQRs, and then the upper fence is Q3 plus 1.5 of those IQRs. So it's always 1.5 is the number we use there. Okay, so in terms of the data set from the previous example has outliers, well, we look at first the IQR. So we know in the previous example, we had Q1 is 1.2. Okay, Q3 is 17.9. And so let's first find the IQR, which is Q3 minus Q1. Or in other words, 17.9 minus 1.2, which is 16.7. Got it. And so to find our fences, we say, okay, our lower fence is Q1 minus 1.5 of those IQRs. Or in this case, it would be the Q1, which is 1.2. So 1.2 minus 1.5 times the IQR, which we found to be 16.7. And so that gives us negative 23.85. So any number below that would be considered an outlier. Since our data set did not include a number lower than that, we say there is no outliers on that end. Okay? Whereas the upper fence, let's try the upper fence. So the upper fence is Q3 plus 1.5 of those IQRs, right? Or in this case, it would be 17.9 plus 1.5 of that 16.7, which gives us 42.95. So any number above that would be considered an outlier. Now, we did have a data value that was 76.9, right? And so that because that's above the upper fence, that number would be considered an outlier. In other words, we do have an outlier in this case because it's outside of our fences. So that's the thing we want to talk about is what we call the 5-number summary. The 5-number summary is just those last 5 numbers on that one var stats, okay? And so that's the minimum, the Q1, the median, the Q3, and the maximum. And so this one says the 5-number summary for that data set that we had earlier. So if we look at our one var stats from earlier, then we'll see that, okay, the minimum is 0, Q1 is 1.2, the median is 9.75, Q3 is 17.9, and then our maximum is 76.9. One of the most useful applications of the 5-number summary is what we call a box plot, okay? Sometimes called a box and whiskers plot. We'll explain that later. And that is a graphical way to evaluate the spread of a data set. In particular, a box plot makes it easy to identify the data points that are exactly outliers, right? So below is an example of a box plot for a group of test scores. The labeling is not typically included in the box plot. It's just there to help you understand what the plot is displaying. Okay, so here, that middle part, the median, is that middle of the box. Q1 and Q3 are the edges of our box. And then it's called box and whiskers because it extends to the minimum maximum value as long as it's not an outlier. Okay, so there's a lot of information about the data set here, right? You can see what all the quartiles are, at least approximately anyway. Q1 is about 68, right? Q3 is about 89. The interquartile range is the distance between the Q3 and Q1, right? 89 and 68, so which is about 21 for this one. So here we know the lowest score was 34 and the highest was 99. Looking a little deeper, the box shows us that the middle half of all the scores, which are the values between Q1 and Q3, fall between 68 and 89. So let's try drawing a box plot. In other words, let's try drawing a box plot from this example, right? We know remember was 0. We know Q1 was 1.2. We know the median, or in other words, Q2 was 9.75. We know Q3 was 17.9, and know the max, which again was an outlier, was 76.9. Now here's a visual of that box plot, and again, since 76.9 is an outlier, then we usually recognize that as something separate, and so the highest number inside of the fences, inside the boundaries, would be where that whisker goes, and so in this case it would be this 19.5 would be where that whisker goes up until, and then this outlier we represent something different. Typically we say it's an asterisk, okay? So next one we have is what we call z-scores, right? So one way we can compare values from two different data sets is to calculate their z-scores, right? So the z-score of a data value represents the distance from the mean in terms of standard deviations. So for a data value from a sample mean with x bar and standard deviation of s, the z-score is we take that data value x, subtract that mean x bar, and then divide by the standard deviation s, okay? Verbally, to find the z-score, just subtract the mean, divide by the standard deviation. That's how we find it, okay? So a couple of notes. First, a data point is greater than the mean if z is positive and less than the mean if z is negative or less than 0. Z-scores are typically rounded to 2 decimal places. That's usually how we do it. So the z-scores for a data value is simply a measure of how many standard deviations above or below the mean that it is. So, like here, example 8 says, if the mean height for male humans is 69.3 inches, a little taller to be, not much, with a standard deviation of 2.8 inches, find a z-score for each, and that is a man who is 6'5" tall. Now, first we have to convert everything to inches, so we know that, okay, a foot is 12 inches, so that means that 6 feet, okay, 6 feet along with 4 inches is, okay, 6 times 12 plus 4 inches, right? Or in other words, 6 times 12, which is 72, plus 4, in other words, we know 76 inches, okay? So 76 inches, if we want to convert that into a z-score, we'd say z equals, and so we'd say, okay, take that value, so 76 inches, minus the mean is 69.3 inches, and then divide by the standard deviation, which is 2.8 inches, which approximately equals 2.39. So that'd be the z-score for someone who's 6'4" inches. Now, someone who's 5'4" inches, this guy here, would be, okay, same thing, right? So 5 feet plus 4 inches. Converting that, we know that's 5 times 12 plus 4. In other words, 64 inches, okay? And then so the z-score would be taking that 64, subtracting the average, the mean, which is 69.3, and then dividing by the standard deviation here, which is 2.8. And so that's approximately negative 1.89, which again is below average. All right, so example 9 says, as you probably know, there are 2 main companies that offer standardized college entrance exams, the ACT and the SAT. So since each has a completely different scoring scale, it's relatively difficult to compare the scores of students that take different exams. So one year, the ACT had a mean score of 21.2 and a standard deviation of 5.1, versus that same year, the SAT had a mean score of 1,498 and a standard deviation of 347. Suppose that a scholarship committee is considering 2 students, one who scored 26 on ACT, whereas the other scored at 1,800 on the SAT. Both are pretty good scores, but which one is better? So the only way to do this is compare their z-scores for their specific test. So here for the ACT, let's compare. Okay, guys, so our z-score for the ACT, we'd say, okay, well, that student scored a 26. Subtract the mean for the ACT, which was a 21.2, and then divide by the standard deviation for the ACT, which is 5.1, which is about 0.94, versus the SAT for that same student. So their Z-score for the SAT, well, they scored at 1800. Subtract the mean, which was 1498, and then divide by the standard deviation for the SAT, which was 347. So that gives us approximately 0.87. So it looks like 7. So it looks like they scored better on the ACT overall. Okay, so there's more supplemental problems, but I think that's good enough for today. So just make sure we know exactly what the Z-scores are, our positions, our quartiles, and how to find outliers, okay? Always remember, math is everywhere.